and I have Welcome to MediaPath. I'm Louise Palanker.
And I'm Fritz Coleman.
Here at MediaPath, we find that we each travel our own path towards the entertainment that informs and delights us, and we all create a path that we share with others. Whether it's photos of your feet on vacation or the stellar career carved and crafted by Carol Leifer, a stand-up comedian who has applied her creative gifts to writing for TV, authoring books, acting, producing, speaking, and beyond. One of my all-time favorite comedians, Carol Leifer, will join us shortly. But first, class, we turn to Fritz with announcements.
Okay, pay attention. Homeroom number 7, please take your seats. Hello to our esteemed MediaPath listeners and viewers. Since we've had a lot of recent growth on our YouTube channel, I want to personally extend a welcome if you're new here, and we're so happy to have you with us. This has been an exciting year for us at MediaPath. We're on episode 230. At the end of the year, we'll be at episode 250. We've had an unbelievable roster of guests throughout the years. Henry Winkler and Andy Potts and Hal Sparks and Joanne Worley and Rick Springfield and Kelly Bishop and lots more. We're a weekly show, so if you've only just discovered us, to say there's a lot to catch up on if you haven't yet. We invite you to please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube, and feel free to help us out with a quick star rating on Apple or Spotify.
5 stars, Fritz. You got to ask for all 5.
Okay.
You got to be specific.
Go big. Okay. And if you have 5 stars in your particular device, please give us 5. We also have a presence now on Buy Me a Coffee, where you can support our work if you're so inclined. The link will be in the show notes. Thank you, as always, for being a part of the MediaPath community. And you know this, we love you.
Well, those were really nice announcements, Fritz. And when are Color Wars? Next week?
Color Wars.
Okay, so why don't you just go ahead and roll right on into your recommendation.
There's a series of documentaries on Netflix called Trainwreck. They explore various infamous events and cultural moments, including chaos, scams, and unexpected consequences. Some of the previous ones have been Woodstock 99, around the violence and sexual assaults at Woodstock 99. I had no desire to watch that one. They had one of the Astroworld tragedy about deaths and injuries that happened in the Astroworld Festival. I had even less of a desire to watch that one. They even had one called The Poop Cruise, which was a chaotic and unpleasant experience of a group of passengers on a cruise ship that lost power. I hope I never am forced to watch that one. But the most recent one is called The Cult of American Apparel. This caught my eye because American Apparel is a huge Los Angeles company. I have friends that work there and did business with them. They make colorful clothes and they have provocative advertising. It quickly grew in popularity because their items are what they call ethically produced, meaning they have a huge factory, but not sweatshop conditions. Their workers, from the sewers to the cutters and all, are paid well above minimum wage. And I thought, well, that's cool. Maybe this would be one of the things that helps bring labor back to the United States. The company made very basic popular clothing styles. They sold it with provocative, almost softcore porn-style print ads. They quickly expanded to 11 countries. The company was started by a charismatic and controversial Canadian founder and CEO, Dov Charney. Employees at first were very excited to work for Dov. He built a cult-like workforce. Then, over time, stuff got dark. He would humiliate employees in front of the group. He was allegedly sexually harassing females. He made them sign NDAs. People were afraid to quit because they feared retribution. There were a number of lawsuits filed by employees, but none stuck because in the NDAs, people had to agree to settle by arbitration. He ended up driving the company into the ground and going to work managing the clothing lines for, you'll never guess who, Kanye West. The further I got into this thing, the more I realized this is a great study of a malignant narcissist and how he treats people like Donald Trump. Seems like an almost identical personality type. Employees get sucked into his system because of his enthusiasm and his charisma. He goes off the deep end, yet employees are afraid to go against him because of retribution. There was a similar documentary about WeWork, which is the office space sharing company, about a cult-like leadership there that drove his company into the ground. But it's fascinating, especially if you live in Los Angeles. I know I shouldn't do that, but I did. Trainwreck, The Cult of American Apparel on Netflix.
Yeah, I started watching it last night, Fritz, and, you know, it is interesting to watch that in many cases, the personality traits that will drive you to create something huge and audacious is exactly what then drives it back into...
Self-destructive, exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, Fritz, you have watched Mariska Hargitay's doc, My Mom Jane, yes?
Love it. Mm-hmm.
Well, this is one of the most remarkable docs I have ever seen. My Mom Jane is Mariska Hargitay's exploration into the public and private legacy of her mother and the unique family bonds left in her wake. Going in, I knew the bare basics. Mariska Hargitay is the daughter of Jane Mansfield and Mickey Hargitay. Jane was a sexy movie star. Mickey was a bodybuilder. Jane died in a car accident when Mariska was very young. She grew up to become an actor and has starred in SVU something for the past 50 to 70 years. That was the extent of my awareness of these people. So I was ready to dive in and advance my learning. With no memory of her mom as a person, Mariska chose to veer away from the public image Jane had left behind as a breathy sexpot. We quickly learn that when you looked like Jane Mansfield in the 1950s, your choices as a performer were limited. The story Mariska tells is as unique as it is universal. There are twists galore revealed and unraveled, and telling you much more would be a spoiler, so I will step carefully. Mariska had always been warned by her father not to read any of the salacious books written about her mom, and so she didn't. Sitting her brothers down for the conversations you'll see in this film is therapy for everyone connected and affected by Jane. Each relationship arc was left with unresolved issues and questions. Jane Mansfield played classical piano and violin, and she spoke 5 languages. She was brilliant. She was buxom. In the 50s, the scream of biology won. The studios presented only her sexy side, which never led, as she had hoped, to more serious roles. Mariska is finally ready to meet the mom behind the image, and the journey will delight and surprise you at every turn. Call your sibling, keep talking about the stuff that matters, the memories that matter, and the emotional harmonies that connect us. In My Mom Jane, Mariska Hargitay inspires us to do that, and you will find the film on HBO Max.
Just loved it. I watched it twice. I watched it once alone and once with my neighbors.
Oh.
And it was really interesting, just from a child's standpoint, of how all the kids, and Mariska in particular, because she was a girl, resented her mother's voice and this thing, this faux front that she put on. And I thought, I so understand that. And she wanted to be not like her at all. And then there are some twists in there about her father and all that. And I thought it was extremely brave and extremely touching, and I recommend it, even if you don't know who she is. And Jane Mansfield was like a dinner theater Marilyn Monroe. You know, she was blonde and beautiful and big boobs, and you know, and as you mentioned, she was so talented in so many different ways. But in that period of time, Hollywood wasn't buying it.
Yeah, she was so much more than that, personified by that appearance on Jack Parr, where he almost makes fun of her for wanting to play the violin. Like he's so dismissive that it's hurtful. So we're going to introduce Carol Leifer.
Yay!
We're going to turn a corner towards Carol. It's difficult to know which credits to list when introducing Carol Leifer. One is more impressive than the next. She's an Emmy winner for her writing on Hacks. She's been nominated 6 additional times. She's written for Curb Your Enthusiasm, Carol Burnett, 90 Years of Laughter and Love, Modern Family, Seinfeld, and so much more. She's starred in 5 comedy specials, appeared on Letterman 25 times. She's written at least 3 books. She is Carol Leifer. Welcome, Carol.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us. So
how are you guys?
We're good. You know, we had your co-writer on, Rick, and your most recent book is How to Write a Funny Speech, and we're going to get to that. But I want to open on your dad, because I fell in love with your dad. If you read Carol's books, prepare to fall in love with her dad. And I have read that the women who enjoy career success often had a father who really believed in them. So tell us more about it.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, I know. Sarah Silverman has a recent comedy special where she talks a lot about her close relationship with her dad. Yeah. Well, my dad and I were very close because he was an optometrist by trade, and his name was Seymour.
Loving that.
Come on. I mean, you can't help but
Did he
do that
force you to
joke.
wear those glasses?
I'll tell you a story about glasses in a bit. But anyway, he was a lover of humor. He dreamed of being a comedian or a comedy writer. But whenever we asked him, the family, how come you didn't pursue it? His generation was always like, yeah, how to make a living. You know, it was a very far off dream. But I watched him as a girl growing up. He was an encyclopedia of jokes. He was literally like, give me a subject and I'll tell you a joke about it.
Wow.
And not only that, but Fritz, we know as comics, he told a joke as well as any pro I know. He just had a great delivery. And he really, I guess watching him connect with people through humor made me want to do that as well, because I also worked for him at his optical office as a teenager. And as a receptionist, I saw my dad in action. If there were too many people in the waiting room, he'd come out. I'll get to all you guys. He'd tell them a joke. If he had a patient who was nervous about an eye exam, he'd tell them a joke. I saw how humor is a nice bridge to people.
Yeah.
And
Did he see your success?
Oh, yeah.
yes.
Oh,
What was nice was he passed in 2004. So he really got to see, especially my stand-up success. Oh, yeah. Also, yeah, Seinfeld. What was really great about him, and I talk about this, Louise, you know, in my book, is when I first did my first Letterman, which was Hold On to Your Hats, in 1982, my father was so into seeing my set that he bought a VCR, and at that time a VCR was about $1,000.
Yes.
So he, you know, and he said when he saw my name in the New York Times under the TV listings, you know, he said, I cried like a baby. So he was very proud of my success and got to see a lot of it. And that was great. But I'll tell you a quick story about one of the greatest things. My dad, like I said, never got to be a pro. You know, he had his optometry practice, but my mom was a shrink.
Wow.
And she every year would go to the APA, the American Psychological Association dinner. So they went. And then they heard that the entertainment for the night canceled. So my father said, I'm happy to go up and
I've got a quick 10.
do some jokes. So they let him. And let me tell you, he did, I believe, 45 minutes of jokes. And he killed them. And just having that, I think my dad was like, you know, ecstatic that he got in front of an audience, he did his thing, and people loved it. So I'm sorry I didn't get to see it. But as my mom said, you know, they were rolling in the aisles and look, they didn't have to pay him a penny.
Well, but what a validation for him, because now he knows he has it. He could do this. He could have done this. But his first instinct was to protect you guys and you know, build a safe a home. And, you know, after World War II, that was the primo responsibility.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, it's not. And even for my generation, I mean, when I decided to become a comic, you know, I went to school with Paul Reiser, and he introduced me to these comedy clubs that were new and popping up. I passed the audition at the comic strip along with Paul and Rich Hall, someone you, Fritz, will remember, I'm sure. And I was a year behind Paul Reiser at college. So I had to go to my folks and say, I passed the audition at this comedy club in Manhattan. I'd like to pursue this. So I transferred schools. I finished my last year at Queens College. But when I look back now and I think, you know, if my son, who's, you know, now 19, came to me, and said, oh, I passed the audition at this comedy club and I want to pursue, you know, but my father was like, Carol, you got to strike while the iron's hot. So I look back and, you know, that was a very loving gesture on both of my parents' parts.
You know, I came out here in 1980, and at that point, the two generational, if you'll forgive this expression, the two generational female comics were you and Elaine Boozler. You were the ones who really were at the top, there was a huge gap between like Joan Rivers and whoever else ahead of you, but you were the ones from my generation that made it at a time when it was really, really hard. When Mitzi relegated all the females to the belly room and didn't think any female should headline in the main room, and so you were a glass ceiling breaker back in those days.
I guess so. Thank you, Fritz. But I really didn't feel like it in terms of, I got so much support, in those early days. I think the, misconception that people have over the course of doing, my press tour is, oh, the guys probably gave you a hard time and it was hard break. The men in the comedy scene at that time, and they were mostly male comics, were very welcoming and very supportive of me. I got a lot of great advice from male comics coming up. So
you came up with a great group,
Yes.
Paul Reiser and Jerry Seinfeld and Larry Miller and all those guys and Rich Hall and all those wonderful comics that started at the comic strip and Catch a Rising Star. That, to me, that was the pantheon of stand-up, and it sort of branched out from there. And wow, so you learned in a good class.
I did. And you know what is so funny to think back? It's like, people don't believe this. Like in those days, when I passed the audition in 1977 and started to go out on the road in 79, you knew all the comics that were out there.
Yeah.
There were probably about 30. And we knew the whole New York scene and the California scene too, going out there and doing evening at the Improv or whatever. I mean, now there are probably 1 million comedians.
Seriously.
Yeah, but at that time it was really kind of a cottage industry, should I say?
Did you have any difficulty getting booked as a headliner as a female comic?
Not particularly as a headliner. Between you and me and your podcast, I never really liked headlining because I always felt very pressured. And actually, the one thing that men have that women don't have as comics is men have a much more powerful voice. And a lot of times I always felt like I couldn't compete because of having a woman's voice. That was
That's
always
very interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a power position when you're on stage. And I just remember in the old days, not so much Elaine and you, because you guys were pros, but the other female comics who were coming up at the Comedy Store, there's a power dynamic in being on stage with a microphone, and not every man in America was willing to give up that power to the woman with a microphone. And they had to work harder to get the attention. And I see what you're saying about the voice. That's a physical manifestation of what I'm talking about.
Yes, absolutely. So I would say I didn't really have trouble getting booked. More so, they wouldn't put on 2 women in a row at the time because they felt like we were a specialty act. We'll have the singer, then the woman, then the monkey act, then another woman. And I really remember, but I use this story as a kind of guide for younger people. When I would be waiting at the bar to go on a Catch a Rising Star, and they wouldn't put 2 women on, following each other. I remember being at the bar one time, and Rita Rudner was at the other end, and I was at the other end, looking at each other and somehow communicating with a glance like, can I use the S word on your podcast?
Yeah, sure.
Can you believe this bullshit? We got to wait. But I think we both made a very good choice, and this is why I use this as advice to younger people, in not making a big deal about it. Like if we had gone up to Rick Newman, the manager of the club, and go, it's ridiculous that 2 women can't go on in front of each other, and I think this is crap, and you should change your policy. If we had both done, we would have been thrown out of the club. I mean, sometimes we knew this too shall pass at some point. This is the way it is now, but you still want to get on, you still want to do your thing, so just kind of ride it out. And I think we both knew as women comics, this is going to change. Not right now, but it will change.
You helped to change it. Were the club owners supportive of you all? You and Rita and the girls? Ladies?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. It really wasn't, I did think of still being a woman comic as a big advantage because people still want to hear a woman's perspective about things. And I think that makes us unique. So in that regard, I think and I know as a woman writer, it's really helped me because we have a different lens on everything. Like when I wrote on Seinfeld, I got a lot of ideas on that were based from being a woman writer. You know, like Elaine thinks the Korean manicurists are talking about her behind her back in Korea. And I know this very well because that happened to me when I was living in New York. That's a story from real life. You know, Elaine thinks there were skinny mirrors at the department store. Okay, now Louise knows exactly what I'm talking about when I mention a skinny mirror. Oh, yeah. I don't know if you do, Fritz, because none of the men
I've always
on
been
the
skinny,
staff.
but I look for a fat mirror to make me look normal.
That's true.
Now let me ask you this: was Elaine's point? I know you added her voice. Was her point of view your point of view?
No.
Okay.
No, we wrote for all the characters. I'm just mentioning the female ideas because those were ideas that a man was not going to pitch because of my experience. So a lot of times people think that I wrote the Spongeworthy episode because, you know, of the femaleness of the idea. That was Peter Melman. So it was always very fair-based at the show. It wasn't like we're hiring you, Carol, as a writer because you can write for Elaine's voice. It was everybody wrote for all the characters. What
were some of your best loved episodes? Because I don't think you guys could have imagined a time where anybody could call up any episode on demand and know them by heart the way they currently do.
Yeah. Well, besides, you know, having been part of a lightning in a bottle show, I mean, they don't come along very often, and I feel very grateful to have been a part of it. It also makes me happy to hear how much pleasure, you know, Seinfeld, the series gives people. I mean, I had so many people during COVID come up to me and say, you know what, we watch Seinfeld every night, or, you know, we've binged season this or that to pass the time. And that, I think, to any writer on the show would make them feel incredible. I mean, of my favorite episodes, you know, one that I think won an Emmy for Larry David was The Contest. You know, the one where they're all waiting to see who can hold out the longest, and we all know what hold out means. I admired that one so much. The writing is just so brilliant. And the fact that they included Elaine in that contest, it wasn't just the guy thing, I think was subliminally a beautiful touch to that episode.
And you had worked with Larry and Jerry in the clubs, correct? So was that a smooth transition? They understood who you were and vice versa? They
both, my audition nights, they both passed me. Larry passed me at Catch Rising Star, and Jerry passed me at the comic strip. So literally day one of show business, I'd go back with them.
Yeah, and you have a tape of that night, right?
I do.
Are there any jokes that you currently use in your act that are on that tape?
You know what, Louise? Actually, there's one that I did all the way up until the commercial went off, but everybody remembers it. In my first 5 minutes, of course, you know, the Trident Gum commercial, 4 out of 5 dentists recommend sugarless gum for their patients who chew gum. And my bit was, you know, who's this fifth guy? You know, what's he recommending? Rock candy and jujubes? But of course, rock candy, who knows what that is anymore? And even jujubes is a very remote candy, if they even make it. So
remote candy.
Yeah.
You will find them on the moon.
Yeah, I probably change it. I don't know, Jawbreakers or some other very dense sugar candy. But I was doing that. My first 5 minutes is not bad. It's not. I was doing jokes like there was a joke I did about the First Woman's Bank in New York.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you heard this bank, but it's a bank where once a month you lose interest. So I can do that now, right?
Yes,
Easy.
Come on, yes.
absolutely. So you say in your book that when you wrote or pitched the idea, because I'm not sure, once you got to the end of an episode, I'm sure there were a lot of voices, but you said that you were included in every aspect of production, from the casting to the editing. What did that add to the finished product, having you involved?
Well, what was great about that at Seinfeld, being involved in the casting, in the editing, in every step of it, is that doesn't usually happen on any sitcoms. You just kind of write your script and then you're in the room when you rewrite it and that's it. So early on, I got a great training in casting. I mean, I can tell you now, this many years later, working on current shows, what's terrible is actors used to come in and audition, which was great because you would get a vibe from them. You could see how they reacted being in front of big stars like Jerry and Larry, who were always in every audition. And now it's all purely people send in tapes.
Mm-hmm.
It's no more. They record themselves at home and they send in. And I've been on some shows now where people sent in a very good audition, but they really were not great during the episode. So, that's something that's changed that I'm sorry about. But to be in editing, to be in every step of the process, I learned so much, and I don't know if I worked on other shows, if I would have developed those skills, because they were generous enough, those guys, to include us in that.
Now, the writing style in Curb was different. Now, this is the legend that Kirby had an outline. Larry would give you point A to point B, and then it was your creativity and responsibility to fill in the dialogue between point A and point B. So there was a lot of improvisation. Is that true?
Yes, it was. Well, how that worked was you'd first go in and pitch ideas. Like, for example, and Larry always loved stuff from real life. I had an Audi for a long time. Mm-hmm. And when I would bring it in for service in the Valley, I brought it in one time. They were like, "Hey, wait in this waiting room." And it was pretty nice. They had coffee and they had these nothing bundt cakes, which is still on Ventura. Anyway.
Larry drove an Audi in the series, too.
Yes, I think that's,
He did.
yes,
He
I
did.
think that's so. Anyway, it was lovely coffee and the cake. So I found myself, whenever I was in the Valley, kind of maybe stopping by the service center and going, guys, I hear a ping, or can you look at my tires? And I'd sit and I'd have a little cake, a little coffee. I knew that was the kind of idea that Larry David would really love, and we wound up using it. He changed it to licorice. He would go to the dealership for licorice. But so anyway, the process of Curb is you pitch your ideas. He would pick a few, and then he would go off with his co-showrunner, a guy named Jeff Schaefer, who I worked with at the Seinfeld, and they would develop these outlines. Like 10 pages, here's what happens. They would include some lines for it here and there, but really more suggestions. And then the cast would really basically improv these scenes. And he brought me and a couple of writers back to be on set to throw lines in there where we felt necessary. And boy, was that was a ton of fun.
Mm. And you appeared on both Seinfeld and Curb.
Yes. Groundbreaking roles of 3 to 5 lines.
Yeah. But
Well,
it's fun.
On Seinfeld, I'm in the Kiss Hello episode. I play Wendy Malick's receptionist in her chiropractor's office, and I have a little scene with George. We get in a fight because I say we expect full payment, even if you've canceled. And I did a little sound that sometimes, if people remember me from that small role, they'll do to me.
Oh, really?
Yes. So that was my little part on Seinfeld. And then on Curb, I played the lemonade mom, where Larry has told he's told the children that the lemonade is not good. So I go over to his house. Susie is there, and I chastise him for doing that to the children. As I improv'd in the scene, Larry, it's like flowers. You're pissing on the buds. It's not a good thing. Those are my two giant roles on the shows.
Thanks for coming along down the media path, and however you have found your way to us, we would love for you to like and subscribe and give us a nice review, because as creators, it is our appointed duty to ask you to do that. You may also want to find us on Instagram and Blue Sky, where we are at Media Path Pod, and on Facebook, where our show page is Media Path Podcast, and our Facebook group is Media Path with Fritz and Wheezy Podcast Community. If you are listening to our show, we are also a video podcast on YouTube at Media Path Podcast. You can write to us at mediapathpodcast@gmail.com. My TikTok is Louise Palenker, where I post behind-the-scenes peeks and clips from the show. And Fritz's TikTok is Fritz Coleman Comedy. He posts stand-up clips and popular dance crazes. Our website is mediapathpodcast.com. There you can binge episodes and our spicy newsletter. Thank you so much. On with the rest of the show. We have a game that we play called IMDb Roulette, and here's how we play. Carol Leifer, you have 47 writing credits and 25 actor credits, 19 producer credits, and on on IMDb. But we're going to focus on the writing, because we know that as a writer, you just invest a lot more time into something than if you appeared on a show for a week or were a guest in the cast. But as a writer, you're really entrenched. So we're going to focus on your writing, and what you do is we're going to say the name of a credit, and then you tell us what you remember, what you learned, what you take away from the experience or the nightmares that may persist, especially in the case maybe of number one, Saturday Night Live, 1985 to 1986.
Saturday Night Live, my first writing job.
Okay.
Are you asking for like a word or?
Oh, no, a story.
No,
we want stories.
A story.
Yeah.
My big story from SNL, I believe, would be the lesson I learned there is you gotta please the big cheese.
Yeah, you had an interesting hiring. You weren't hired by Lauren. You were hired by
That's
a future
right,
senator.
Jim Downey, the head writer for many years, and Al Franken.
Al Franken.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I always felt that Lorne Michaels didn't really respond to me. I just didn't feel like I was in his clique. It just wasn't working. But I always felt like, well, Al and Jim like me. I'm getting sketches on. I'm A-okay.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the season, I didn't go back. I mean, I wanted to focus on my stand-up, but I also think it wasn't great that I didn't. Now, this many years later, I would have tried harder. I would have tried harder to have Lauren like me more. I think I just kind of moved off to the side, which I don't think you can do at a writing job or any job.
Got to play the politics.
Yeah.
But I think he was super political. I get the sense reading his book that he was cliquey and that he enjoyed being cliquey, and being cliquey means that there's going to be people on the outside. That's just the nature of it, and that sort of made him feel more powerful. I don't know. I don't know him, but that's just kind of the sense I got.
Did you see the documentary, the SNL documentary about the writing staff?
Yes.
I saw that and I was exhausted. I said, there's no way I would survive in that circumstance. You don't sleep. There's no guarantee you're going to get a piece on the air. It's every corner of that job seems like defeat to me.
And who's the cast that the season that you were there? Who's in the cast?
It was what I have affectionately dubbed the weird year.
Loving.
Well, it was Randy Quaid, Terry Sweeney, Nora Dunn, Joan Cusack, Robert Downey Jr.
Michael Anthony Hall.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anthony Michael Hall. Yes, it was, a lot of, in retrospect, if you watch those documentaries too, it was heavy on the drama people more than comedy people.
Yeah.
And I think they learned a big lesson from that. But, it's funny, Fritz, when I watched that documentary, I've sort of dreamed a little bit, being in the back nine of my career. Like, I'd like to go back to SNL. It didn't really gel completely that time for me, but I love writing sketches, and I feel like I could really do it this time.
How old were you when you did?
It's unfinished business. We need some closure.
Yeah.
How old
I
were
was
you?
29.
Okay, come on.
You were a baby.
You
need to go back.
You were still have acne at that point.
Yeah.
Right. But, when I saw that documentary and I remember what you have to do as a writer, sleeping over on Tuesday nights, writing, it was like, as an older person now, I could not do it just from that perspective. Like, no, I need to go to bed by 10 o'clock. All that. I got to eat my dinner, in the 5:36 area. That's how I like it now. It's too much.
I'm right. And another thing that drove me, I don't know if it drove me, maybe I just wouldn't be good in any writing staff, but the hard part is you create, you pitch the show, you pitch the thing in Lauren's office, and you sit around like you're sitting at your uncle's feet, and you pitch all these ideas. Then you go write them, and then you go in the writer's room, and you have to pitch these ideas and read the thing. And were the writers supportive of you, or was it like a judge me moment? That seemed awful.
No, I think the writers at the show were very supportive of me. I mean, I was, at the beginning of the season, one of two women, and at the end of the season, one woman. Oh, wow. So I feel like, again, the men on the staff were always encouraging. I wrote a lot with Al Franken, a lot of sketches, and I learned a lot from him. The kids in the hall, I wrote sketches with a lot, Robert Smigel. It was very collaborative, so I have nothing but good memories. I just would try harder to get a better relationship with Lauren. I just didn't try hard enough.
Yeah, but the thing was, as your counselor, as your therapist for this session, I think
Louise.
that, your feelings are being hurt when you're feeling like you're not in. And it's hard to try harder when you're feeling wounded. You kind of retreat. That's
true. But as I've learned, I mean, come on, I'm me. What's not to like?
Of course.
I should have tried harder. He would have liked me.
Well, that's very nice and self-deprecating of yourself. Well, now, you wrote for, Saturday Night Live, of course. But you wrote for Seinfeld. You wrote on Larry Sanders.
We're in the middle of a game, Fritz. Don't give away.
But can I write?
You can rattle it off, but then you got to do number two.
You're so emotionally connected to this. What if I have a question that has to do with what we're speaking about?
You're scaring me.
Okay. Go ahead.
And we do have to get to my book.
That's right. So number two,
okay.
and we
all right. Yes.
Well, you said Seinfeld.
Yes, but we did talk about Seinfeld. So we can jump to number 3 if you'd like, Fritz.
The Ellen Show.
2001, 2002.
Her sitcom, 2001 to 2002.
Yeah. I think that it was a very good experience for me. Ellen DeGeneres is a very talented woman. She sure knows comedy well. I think what was tough about that show was, we did it in 2001, and she was out on the show as herself. But I still think the network had a problem with her being a gay woman on TV. But look,
Were you
Martin.
out at the time of the show?
Yeah, because I met Lori in 96. Yes. So, but look, Martin Mull was in the cast. Jim Gaffigan was in the cast. We had a good time.
Funny
But
people.
I don't know. I think it was still a tough time for an out character on network TV.
Okay, number 4, Better Late Than Never, 2016 to 2018. And you're now working with these legendary figures, and I'm just eager to hear how that went.
Yeah, Better Late Than Never on NBC. It was Terry Bradshaw, Henry Winkler, William Shatner, and
George Foreman.
yes, thank you. And we traveled one season all through Europe, and the next season we traveled all through Asia, and it was a blast. Also, going through Europe and Asia with, these celebrities, and you're following along. Oh, here's your flight. Here's security wherever you go. Here's this. It was just the red carpet rolled out for those guys, and we got to tag along. And those guys look, Henry Winkler is still a really dear friend of mine since that experience. He was at our wedding. And
One
he
of the
just did it.
loveliest people in show business.
Yes, I think him and Tom Hanks have to be voted the nicest people in show business. But we just had so much fun with the guys. To get to know Bill Shatner, and yes, I called him Bill. All those guys are giants, and to work beside them. I did the same thing as I did on Curb. We would just kind of shoot these scenes, and I would run up if I had a funny idea or line for them. And they were very, grateful. And boy, it was, to have traveled to all those places on NBC's dime was a thrill.
How many writers did they have that they were toting around to Europe?
It was just me and someone else, two people.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. This is an iconic show that you wrote on that people talk about. Carol Burnett, 90 Years of Laughter and Love in 2023.
Yes. Well, Carol Burnett, who also wrote the foreword to my book,
Yes.
which we need to get to.
We're going to talk about that as soon as we're
getting
almost
there.
ready.
Okay.
I wish somebody told us
Burnett.
you wrote a book. We would have been to it earlier. No, just kidding.
Yes. What can I say about, here's the thing. When I knew I was going to write on the show, that I was hired, to meet Carol Burnett, the mixture of anticipation, excitement with nervousness was equal. Because, sometimes when you meet your idols, your legends, you need to, you have a cautious eye, because it's like, what if they're not the person I dreamed them to be? Well, from the second I met Carol Burnett, and if you guys met her tomorrow, the sweetest, nicest, most generous person you could ever know. You get to know her. When people wrote her fan letters on the old Burnett show, she would respond to each and every one of them.
Wow.
She's just such a joy. And what was so great about writing on her special was to go back and look at all these sketches that she did and all these shows, and not only how funny she was, but she always gave credit to the whole cast. She called it playing in the sandbox. And, she also kind of invented the celebrity talking to the audience as themselves before a show. So she's just a lovely person. I could not admire her more. Not to name drop, but get out a big bucket. A couple weeks ago, Jane Lynch did a book event with me in Montecito.
Wow.
And we had dinner the night before with Carol Burnett and her husband and me and Jane.
Oh,
and,
my God.
Yeah, and every time I've had the pleasure to have dinner with her and her husband, Carol tells these stories that are just wild, and she loves telling them. So it's not like you have to say, can you how about a few stories from she is ready to just share the most remarkable, precious stories ever. So working with her is a joy, and I hope to do it again. God love her. She just turned 92 in April, and she's a force. She'll always be a force, but could not be a lovelier person. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Not this book, which we're going to talk about, but my last book, when I wrote on her special, I took the time to read her books, and they're a joy, and I recommend them to everyone. But I gave her my book at the time, How to Succeed in Business Without Really Crying. And I said to Carol, when I gave it to her, Carol, I just wanted to give you my book, but I hate when someone, no pressure to read. You know, if you flip through it and you see something, but no pressure. Literally the next day, she had read it cover to cover.
Wow.
And she not only had read it, but was like, oh, and I love the part where this happened, where you know someone's really read it. And I love the part where this happened. She is that kind of generous person.
What a treasure. What?
Yes, she really is.
I just love, I love that friendship, and I have you on my Facebook, and I love when you talk about Carol Burnett because it's just adorable. So we're going to just do one more. It's your Emmy. We're going to do Hacks, and then we're going to talk about your book.
Okay. Hacks was a great experience. I worked on it last season. A lot of people ask me, what's Jean Smart like? I only know her from the few parties that they throw, because once the writer's room is over, the 3 executive producers, who I give all glory to with that show, they go off and they shoot it. So we don't get to interact with the cast because we're not there for the shoot. But what I loved about that show, and like I mentioned, all glory to the 3 showrunners, because it is so much their work and their baby, to learn from 3 people who are easily 20 to 25 years younger than me at this stage of my career is really a joy, because I still like learning from people things that I wasn't aware of, and they're shaping the story, really more so how they can juxtapose the hard, funny laugh with the emotion and keeping it real and not feeling sentimental or cloying at all. So that really was a gift working there. And I got to tell you, to finally win an Emmy after writing for 40
Where is that
years.
Emmy? I don't see it on that thing behind you.
What is your Emmy
I
winning?
should have brought it. It's in my other room.
Which episode? Remind us which episode it was.
Season 3, episode 5.
Right, but what happened?
Oh, very good, Fritz.
Very good,
It's
Fritz.
called One Day. And one of the factions of one of the points of the episode is something that came up in the room, me as an older person. It's called One Day because when you get to this stage of life, like I mentioned about SNL, well, maybe I'd like to go back and write there. And maybe I'd like to, I'd still like to, I have an idea for a song. I'd like to write a song with somebody who knows what, but it was called One Day because when you get to be this age, this stage of life, one day is now. I mean, we don't have a lot more time to explore these dreams. The present day is important. So Jean has a monologue in this episode where she and Ava get lost in the hiking, and she talks about that. So I felt productive on the writer's staff as an older person in being able to share that, because someone 20 to 30 years younger does not really get the wheels of being in this older mind.
I usually don't like shows about stand-up. I mean, going back to Punchline with Tom Hanks and Sally Field, they because I'm in the business, it's too close. It feels fake. But
Yes.
I just love Hacks because I know Jean. She delivers that stuff like with such chops, and the writing is good, and Hannah is fantastic. I just love that show.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, Carol,
for whatever part I could take in saying thank you.
you are so welcome. If you haven't tried Hacks, take it from the beginning. It's just a wonderful ride. Carol Leifer, your latest book is How to Write a Funny Speech, for a wedding, bar mitzvah, graduation, and every other event you didn't want to go to in the first place. Your co-writer is Rick Mitchell, and I thought that I would treat you with a review, an Amazon review. And
yes,
this
please.
one is from RX Senate, and his headline is exactly what you need to knock it out of the park. I read it on the plane the week before my daughter's wedding, and I roughed out a draft. I didn't know that roughed was a verb, but yay. The book brilliantly articulated everything I needed. I got laughs, I got compliments, and the happy couple specifically thanked me for capturing their relationship so well. People actually commented on the balance of funny and meaningful. I sent links to the book to everyone. So that's
wow.
Isn't it fun to hear from the people that read your book and delivered a speech?
Yes, my brother, ex-Senate,
Yeah.
posted a beautiful.
He really did. I thought about your dad when as you were telling the story about your dad getting up unannounced and unexpected. I thought about the book. I said, man, it sounds like he read some tips from your book. And all the funny parts of that book, you can just hear your voice saying them. It was so funny. Your little lists of things. It's a wonderful read. Even if you don't expect to ever speak out loud again in your life, you should read this book because it's really very funny.
It's so funny.
I so appreciate it. I mean, what is great is it really caught on. We sold out on Amazon, actually, a month ago, and it just got back in stock. So Rick and I were just thrilled that, people responded to it in such a way. I mean, what we're really proud of in the book, and we set out to do, was we walk people step by step through a speech, A to Z. So we feel like we really took the pressure off people in making a speech, because people are usually so intimidated by this whole process. And the great feedback we've been getting, and that's such a lovely review that we got, is that we're hearing so much that people are like, thank you. What I thought was going to be a nightmare really became so much more of a breeze. And I got compliments, blah, blah, blah. So that really makes us feel good, because we really...
It makes a scary task for people, because that's people, like 75% of the people in the world, their biggest fear is having to speak in front of an audience.
Yes.
And you make a horrible task for the unexperienced really fun. Even if at the end you don't use any of the tips, you have laughed your ass off during the reading of the book.
And also, at the end we have a section called Jokes to Steal for any occasion. We really feel like, even if you're like, I don't know if I can be funny, Rick and I wrote lists of jokes for each occasion. Feel free, take them. From Rick, I'll sing his praises. He won 5 Emmys. So we really feel great that we have been able to just map it out for people. And that's the great feedback that we're getting. The other thing is there are a lot of speech books out there, but it's written by Horace J. Spillmeyer, not from comedy writers who do what we do. So we also are very proud of that, because we didn't see it out there in the market, and we felt like we got to give that to people.
Do you feel pressure on yourself when you give a speech at a wedding or a bar or bat mitzvah, because everyone knows who you are and you can't do your act or something?
Why not?
Something they've seen on YouTube. So,
really, Louise, I love when people ask me to do a speech, not only because, we wrote a book about it, so I kind of feel like we know what we're doing, but it's always very cathartic for me. I love, at a joyful occasion, sharing with people what I feel about them in front of other people that have the same feeling about them. That really fills a void for me in just kind of sitting there and watching the proceedings. I like telling people how I feel about them. Mm-hmm. But also, and Rick and I write about this a lot too in the book, at celebrations of life, people are sort of afraid to be funny. They feel like, is this disrespectful? celebrations of life are the perfect place.
Absolutely. No,
Right?
I'm so glad you said that.
Yes, because people love remembering this person. They love stories about them. And, you know, sadly, my cousin Jay, who's 55, passed away from cancer. And his wife, of course, my other cousin, had a celebration of life for him. And I told this story about him, and I really hit on a nerve with people because everybody knew my cousin Jay was the biggest people person you ever saw. Life of the party, just a social butterfly. And I told this story about how he and his wife, and myself and my wife Lori, we'd gone to the Greek Theater to see the Beach Boys.
Ooh.
And the concert was great, and we were lucky enough. I had been invited to the after party, and all I kept talking about all night was I had opened for the Beach Boys 1,000,000 years ago in Lake Tahoe at Harris. So I said, I'm dying to go over to Mike Love and go, hey, remember me from, opening for you? Bah, 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 bah. So we go to the little party, and I'm trying to make my way to Mike Love. And you know when you try to sense an opportunity? Oh, no, it's not a good time. I would go over, no, it's not a good time. I turn around to the bar to get a drink. I turn around. My cousin Jay is talking to Mike Love like they've been friends for 40 years, talking, laughing. Literally, I go up, and my cousin Jay is like, hey, Mike, do you remember my cousin Carol? She opened for you. And people love the story. Not only because, it gets a laugh, but it was like it really captured the spirit and the wonderfulness of my cousin, who just in any social situation was a star.
So they're restocked on Amazon.com for your book,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Are you doing a book
today,
tour with
Barnes
this?
Barnes and Noble. Barnes and Noble is coming. Doing book events everywhere. I'm going to be on Kelly and I don't know when this airs, but I'm going to be on Kelly and Mark.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Good.
that's going to be August 8th, I believe. Let me check my calendar. August 7th.
Okay, so a month ago, I went to Flappers to see you and Kathy Ladman and
Yes.
Wendy Liebman doing Herlarious, which is your group show that you're going to take around the United States. And I'm telling you, it is fantastic. It's three different vectors of a female point of view. Everybody has a different sort of personality, but it's fantastic. It really, I thought, wow, I'm so glad you guys are going to take this on the road.
Thank you, Fritz. And that was so nice of you to come to the show. Yeah, I love working with Laddie and Liebman. They really are, when you can work with people who make you laugh as much as an audience, it's such a treat. And they're such lovely gals. It's really just a joy to work with them.
Well, before we close, I have a promo idea. If you guys haven't already thought of this, you could
please lay it on me.
Everyone films wedding speeches anyway, so they've all, summer's happening, but they're all being filmed. It's not like we're missing an opportunity. But you could commission, if you wrote a funny speech after reading the book, to send it to you, and then you could put together a compilation of little clips from all of the speeches that people crushed. Thanks to your book.
Well, we've started to do that, Louise. Actually, some people, because we offered this in the book, have reached out to me personally and to Rick to help them with their speeches. And I just heard from someone who got married a weekend ago, and he said he did great, and I was so happy to hear it. And it was really fun to work with him on it because he had the bones and he had the book, but we just kind of put it all in place. And so Rick and I have been taking those speeches, their first drafts, and our later drafts for people to see, maybe hopefully for another book, because people you can crush it out there. You can do it.
Yep.
We know it.
Okay, before we go, I want to do my favorite Carol Leifer joke of late.
Love it.
What a treat.
You became a vegan recently, and somebody said, why did you become a vegan? She said, well, I am a Jewish lesbian, and I wasn't in a group small enough.
I wasn't part of a small enough minority.
Oh my God!
Yes.
I fell off the couch.
Oh, I'm so glad
You're
like
so
it.
awesome. Thank you so much for spending some time with
you
us.
guys, I had the best time.
I hope so.
We love you. All right,
Yeah.
here come your closing credits. We want to thank our guest, Carol Leifer. Our team includes producer Dina Friedman, John Maddox, Bill Filipiak, Mason Brown, Raph Rusak, Jordan Reyes, Haley
Jordan
Freight.
Reyes.
Yeah, he's right here. Say hi, Jordan. Garrett Arch and you. Our theme music is by me and John Maddox. I am Louise Planker here with Fritz Coleman and Carol Leifer. Be well and wise. Take care of each other, and we will see you along the media path. Carol, that was so good.
That was awesome. Thank you so much.
We got you out.
We got you out here
Can
at
we
like
take a
4:21.
picture?
You did.
Can we take a picture with your face on the screen before you hang up the Zoom call? We're just going to go right over to the screen.